The ancient stone walls of the Valdori Temple stretched high into the darkness. Captain Jake Morrison held his flashlight steady as he walked through the empty halls. His ship, the New Dawn, had picked up strange energy readings from this dead planet 3 days ago. Now he stood in what looked like a library, but the books were made of metal and glowed with a soft blue light. Jake touched one of the metal books. It opened by itself, showing words in a language he had never seen before. His translator device worked slowly, turning the alien words into something he could understand. What he read made his blood run cold. The Third Planet Protocol, the title said. The sleeping deathworld of Sol system, Jake read more. The Valdori had been the most powerful race in the galaxy 3,000 years ago. They had ruled over hundreds of worlds and millions of different alien species. But this book talked about something that had scared them more than any enemy they had ever fought. The book told a story about humans. 3,000 years ago, humans had burst out of their small solar system like a storm. They had ships that moved faster than anything the galaxy had ever seen. They had weapons that could destroy entire fleets. But worst of all, they had ideas that made other species want to join them instead of fight them. The Valdori records showed that humans had taken over nearly half the galaxy in just 50 years. They did not rule like the Valdori did. They did not make slaves or demand tribute. Instead, they freed slaves and gave every species a voice in how things were run. This made the humans more dangerous than any conqueror, because people wanted to be conquered by them. Then suddenly, the humans had stopped. They had pulled back to their home system and gone quiet. The galaxy had slowly forgotten about them, but the Valdori had not. They had made a law that no one could go to the Sol system. They had made sure every species in the galaxy knew this rule. Do not wake the humans. Jake read through more records. The Valdori believed that humans had not died out or lost their technology. They believed humans had simply chosen to sleep. The record said humans were disgusted by the galaxy they found. They had seen too much cruelty and decided to turn away from it all. The last entry in the book was a warning written by the last Valdori emperor. We have contained the humans and their system with a wall of fear and silence. As long as no one disturbs them, they will remain asleep. If they ever wake up again, they will finish what they started. The galaxy will become what they want it to be, not what we made it to be. Jake closed the book and stepped back. He thought about the galaxy he knew. The Galactic Council ruled from their crystal city on Centros Prime. Different species had different ranks. Some species were barely allowed to speak in council meetings. Others, like his own Terran Colonial Union, had good positions but still had to follow the rules made by the older, more powerful species. He had always thought this was just how things worked. The strong ruled the weak. The old species knew better than the young ones. But reading these records made him think differently. Maybe the galaxy was not as good as he had believed. Jake's communicator beeped. His first officer, Commander Lisa Santos, was calling from the ship. "Captain, we're getting strange readings from the outer system," she said. "It looks like a large fleet moving this way." "What species?" Jake asked. "Unknown, sir. The ships don't match anything in our database." "They're big, and there are a lot of them." Jake felt worried. He gathered the metal books and ran back to his ship. As the New Dawn lifted off from the dead planet, Jake looked at the scanner readings. The unknown fleet was huge. At least 500 ships, all bigger than anything in the Galactic Council fleet. "Set course for Centros Prime," Jake ordered. "Maximum speed." As they jumped to faster-than-light travel, Jake wondered who these unknown aliens were. He also wondered if they knew about the old Valdori rule. In the back of his mind, he thought about the third planet of the Sol system, Earth. For 3,000 years, it had been left alone. The humans living there did not even know that aliens existed. But what if someone broke the rule? What if these unknown ships were heading for human space? Meanwhile, in a solar system far away, Dr. Lisa Parker sat in her laboratory on Earth. She worked for SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. For 15 years, she had been listening to space, hoping to hear signals from alien civilizations. Tonight was different. Her radio telescopes were picking up signals that made no sense. They were not random like normal space noise. They had patterns like a language or code. But they were coming from everywhere at once, from above, below, and all around Earth. "Sam, come look at this," she called to her colleague. "Professor Sam Rodriguez." Sam walked over and looked at her computer screen. "It's just background radiation, Lisa. You're seeing patterns that aren't there." "No, this is different," Lisa said. These signals have been getting stronger for the past 3 days. And look at this frequency pattern. It's like they're trying to talk to us. Sam shook his head. Lisa, we've been doing this for years. Every time we think we find something, it turns out to be a satellite or a pulsar or cosmic radiation. Don't get your hopes up. But Lisa could not shake the feeling that something was coming. She saved all the data and decided to work through the night. She did not know that her signals were coming from ancient human machines buried deep under Earth's surface. Machines that had been sleeping for 3,000 years waiting for the right moment to wake up. Far away, Admiral Thex Voran of the Craxi Empire stood on the bridge of his flagship. The Craxi were new to the galaxy. They had only developed faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. They were strong, aggressive, and tired of being told what to do by the older species in the Galactic Council. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, "We are approaching the Forbidden System. Sensors show only one inhabited planet, the third one." Thex Voran laughed. "Forbidden by who? The Valdori are gone. Their empire fell 1,000 years ago. I see no reason to fear one primitive planet." He looked at the tactical display showing Earth. "Scan the planet. How advanced are they?" "Early space age, sir. They have basic satellites and a few small space stations. No faster-than-light travel. No energy weapons. They should be easy to conquer." "Good," Thex Voran said. "The Galactic Council thinks they can tell the Craxi where we can and cannot go. We will show them that we make our own rules. Prepare the invasion fleet." The Craxi ships moved toward Earth, not knowing they were about to break the most important rule in galactic history. The alarm bells rang through the halls of the Galactic Council building on Centros Prime. Captain Jake Morrison ran through the corridors carrying the ancient Valdori records. He had to warn them about the Craxi fleet heading toward human space. He burst into the emergency council chamber, where Chancellor Yeath Melanor of the Trithari was speaking with other council members. The Trithari looked like tall, thin birds with blue feathers and large black eyes. When Jake entered, all conversation stopped. "Chancellor," Jake said, breathing hard, "I have urgent information about the Sol system." The room went completely silent. Several council members stepped back as if Jake had said something terrible. "Captain Morrison," the Chancellor said in a quiet voice, "we do not speak of that system in these halls." "But you have to listen," Jake said. "I found Valdori records. There's a Craxi fleet heading there right now. They're going to attack the humans." An older council member, a gray-skinned hegemony representative, made a clicking sound of fear. "The Craxi don't know about the protocol. Someone must stop them." "What protocol?" Jake asked. "What are you all so afraid of?" Chancellor Yeath Melanor looked around the room. The other council members nodded slowly. "Captain, what I am about to tell you must never leave this room. 3,000 years ago, before your species even had space travel, the humans nearly conquered our entire galaxy." Jake stared at him. "That's impossible. Humans are barely out of their own solar system." "That is what they want us to think," the Chancellor said. "The Valdori archives are correct. Humans once had an empire that stretched across half the galaxy. They had technology we still don't understand, but more dangerous than their ships or weapons were their ideas." Another council member, a crystal-bodied Zarian, spoke up. "Humans believe all intelligent species are equal. They think every world should govern itself. They freed slaves everywhere they went. They destroyed the natural order that keeps the galaxy stable." "So what happened to them?" Jake asked. "They chose to leave," Chancellor Yeath Melanor said. "Our ancestors believe humans became disgusted with the galaxy they found. Too much war, too much suffering, too much cruelty. So they went home and made themselves forget. They wiped their own history and went back to being a simple, peaceful species." "But they're still dangerous?" Jake asked. "More dangerous than ever," the Chancellor said. "Because now they've had 3,000 years to think about what they saw. If they wake up, they won't just conquer us. They'll judge us. And they'll find us wanting." On Earth, alarms were ringing in military bases around the world. Radar operators watched in shock as massive objects appeared on their screens. Objects too big to be meteors or satellites. President Katie Walsh sat in the Situation Room in Washington. Around the table were the leaders of every major country on Earth. General Rick Carter, head of the newly formed Global Defense Command, pointed at the main screen. "Madam President, we have confirmed contact with non-human intelligence," he said. 537 objects have entered our solar system. They're clearly artificial, and they're heading straight for Earth. President Walsh felt her mouth go dry. How long until they arrive? 18 hours at their current speed, General Carter said. We're trying to establish communication, but they're not responding to any of our signals. Dr. Lisa Parker sat at the table, still amazed that her years of searching for aliens had suddenly become reality. What about those signals I detected? Are they connected to this fleet? We don't know, General Carter said, but the signals have been getting stronger since the ships appeared. It's almost like something on Earth is responding to them. In another part of the building, Admiral Beth Collins looked at satellite images of the approaching ships. As head of the Space Defense Force, she had always planned for the possibility of hostile contact. But these ships were huge. Some of them were 5 miles long. General Carter, she said over the radio, our space-based weapons won't even scratch ships that size. We need to prepare for ground defense. Around the world, military forces prepared for an invasion they could not possibly win. Fighter jets took off from airfields. Navy ships moved into defensive positions. Soldiers took positions around major cities. But deep underground, in places no human had been for thousands of years, ancient machines began to wake up. The first Craxi scout ships entered Earth's atmosphere over the Pacific Ocean. Admiral Thex Varan watched from his flagship as the small, fast ships descended toward the planet's surface. What do you see? He asked his scout commander. Primitive aircraft approaching, Admiral. They appear to be armed with chemical explosives and simple projectile weapons. Should we destroy them? Thex Varan thought for a moment. No, capture a few for study. I want to know what kind of species we're dealing with. But when the Craxi scout ships engaged the human fighters, something unexpected happened. The human pilots flew like nothing the Craxi had ever seen. They performed turns and maneuvers that should have been impossible for their primitive aircraft. Lieutenant Commander Alex Stone led a squadron of F-35 fighters against the alien scouts. He had been a test pilot before joining the Global Defense Force, and he flew like his life depended on it, which it did. Dragon leader to all aircraft, he said over the radio. These things are fast, but they turn like trucks. Use that against them. Alex dove his fighter toward one of the alien ships. The Craxi pilot tried to match his maneuver but could not turn sharp enough. Alex's missiles struck the alien ship's side, and it crashed into the ocean. Around the world, similar battles were happening. Human pilots who should have been completely outmatched were holding their own against advanced alien technology. The Craxi scout commander could not understand it. Admiral, the humans are fighting better than they should be able to, he reported. Their technology is primitive, but their tactics are unusual. Admiral Thex Varan frowned. What do you mean unusual? They fight like they've done this before, sir. Like they know exactly what to do against superior technology. Dr. Lisa Parker sat in a command bunker deep under the Pentagon. Her equipment was picking up more signals than ever before. But now she could see patterns in them, patterns that looked almost like military communications. General Carter, she called out. I think something is talking to our pilots. These signals are coordinating with our fighter squadrons. General Carter looked at her data. That's impossible. Where are the signals coming from? Everywhere, Lisa said. From under the ground, from the ocean floor, from abandoned military bases. It's like the whole planet is waking up. Meanwhile, Captain Jake Morrison's ship arrived at Centros Prime to find the Galactic Council in a panic. Emergency sessions were being called. Military fleets were being recalled from the outer systems. Everyone was preparing for what they believed would be the end of the galaxy as they knew it. Captain, Chancellor Yith Melanor said, you must understand. We are not afraid of human military power. We are afraid of human ideas. If they wake up fully, they will not just defeat us. They will convince our own people to join them. They will tear down everything we have built and replace it with something we cannot control. Jake looked at the fear in the alien leader's eyes. Maybe that wouldn't be such a bad thing. The Chancellor stepped back as if Jake had hit him. Captain Morrison, you don't understand what you're saying. Maybe I understand perfectly, Jake said. Maybe it's time for something better. On Earth, the first major battle was about to begin. Craxi dropships were descending toward major cities. Human military forces were taking positions. And deep underground, machines that had slept for 3,000 years were fully awakening. The rule that had kept the galaxy stable for 3 millennia was about to be broken. And everything was about to change. The first Craxi dropship landed in Central Park in New York City. Alien soldiers poured out, expecting to face primitive humans with basic weapons. Instead, they found themselves surrounded by military forces that seemed to know exactly where they were going to land. General Rick Carter watched the battle from his command center. "How did we know where they were landing?" he asked his intelligence officer. "Sir, we're getting tactical data from sources we can't identify," the officer replied. "Our computers are showing enemy positions before our own sensors detect them." Around the world, the same thing was happening. Human forces were fighting with coordination and knowledge that should have been impossible. In London, Commander Rachel Brooks led a tank unit that destroyed 3 Craxi dropships before they could unload their troops. In Tokyo, Colonel Mike Torres used anti-aircraft weapons that seemed to predict exactly where the alien ships would be. Dr. Lisa Parker watched her equipment in amazement. The signals were coming from everywhere now, from underground facilities that did not exist on any map, from satellites that were not in any database, from ocean platforms that had been hidden under the water for thousands of years. "General Carter," she said, "I think we're not alone down here. There are human installations all over the planet that have been hidden from us, and they're all coming online now." In space, Admiral Beth Collins received reports that made no sense. "Ma'am, Luna Base is responding to our communications, but Luna Base was never built. According to our records, we never put a military installation on the moon." "Then who built it?" Admiral Collins asked. "Unknown, ma'am, but they're launching fighters to help defend Earth." The Craxi Admiral Thex Varan watched his invasion force get torn apart by humans who should have been helpless. His scout ships were being destroyed by fighters that moved like they had anti-gravity technology. His dropships were being hit by weapons that his sensors said did not exist. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "They're supposed to be primitive." His tactical officer looked terrified. "Admiral, I'm reading massive energy signatures from all over the planet. It's like the whole world is one giant military base." Engineer Tony Garcia worked in a secret facility deep under the Nevada desert 3 hours ago. He had been a normal aircraft engineer working on experimental jet engines. Now he was somehow understanding alien technology that his team had never seen before. "I don't know how I know this," he told his supervisor, "but I can see exactly how their ships work, and I know how to make ours better." His hands moved over alien components taken from crashed Craxi ships. He redesigned human weapons in ways that should have taken years of research. Other engineers around the world were doing the same thing, as if the knowledge was being fed directly into their minds. Captain Jake Morrison received an emergency communication from Earth while he was still at the Galactic Council. The message was from President Katie Walsh herself. "This is President Walsh to any human ships in space. We are under attack by an alien force calling themselves the Craxi Empire. We need immediate assistance." Jake stared at the communication device. How did they get this frequency? How do they even know about faster-than-light communication? Chancellor Yith Melanor looked at the message and his feathers turned white with fear. "It's starting. They're remembering." "Remembering what?" Jake asked. "Everything," the Chancellor whispered. "Captain Morrison, you need to understand. When we say humans once ruled half the galaxy, we don't mean they conquered it and left. They built an empire that still exists. It's been sleeping, but it's still there." Jake felt cold. "What do you mean?" "There are human colonies on thousands of worlds," the Chancellor said. "Hidden bases, secret installations, sleeper agents who don't even know what they are. The humans didn't just go home 3,000 years ago. They went underground, and now they're waking up." On Earth, the tide of battle was turning rapidly. The Craxi had expected to face one primitive planet. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to be everywhere at once. Lieutenant Commander Alex Stone received new orders that appeared on his fighter's computer. Orders from Luna Base, from Mars Station, from installations he had never heard of. But somehow he knew exactly what to do. "All fighters, this is Luna Base Command," a voice said over his radio. "We're uploading new tactical data to your systems. Craxi shields are vulnerable to rotating frequency pulse weapons. Adjust your missiles accordingly." Alex looked at his weapons display. Somehow his missiles had been upgraded while he was flying. Technology that should not have existed was now built into his fighter. Admiral Thex Varan realized his invasion was failing. "Retreat to orbit," he ordered. "We'll bombard the planet from space." But when his ships tried to climb back into space, they found their path blocked. Human ships that had not existed an hour before were now surrounding Earth. Ships that looked like they had been built using technology far beyond anything in the Galactic Council. database Admiral Beth Collins found herself in command of a space fleet she did not remember building. "Ma'am," her communications officer said, "we're receiving data links from human installations throughout the solar system. Mars Base, Europa Station, Titan Research Facility, they're all coming online." "I've never heard of any of those bases," Admiral Collins said. "Neither had I, ma'am, but they're definitely ours." Commander Rachel Brooks led her tank unit through the streets of London, following tactical maps that appeared on her computer. The maps showed Craxi positions with perfect accuracy, as if someone was watching the aliens from space. "Command, this is Brooks," she said over her radio. "How are we getting this intelligence data?" "Unknown, Commander. But keep using it. It's working." Around the galaxy, other things were waking up. On a mining world in the Outer Rim, human workers suddenly remembered they were not just miners. They were sleeper agents, and they had a job to do. Within hours, they had taken control of the planet's communication array and were sending messages to Earth. On the trade world of Nexus Prime, a human merchant named Peter Collins received a message that made no sense to him. But when he read it, he somehow knew exactly what to do. He walked to a storage room he had never noticed before, opened it with a code that came to his mind, and found weapons and equipment that could overthrow the planetary government. Captain Jake Morrison watched in horror as reports came in from across the galaxy. Hundreds of worlds were reporting human uprisings. Planets that had never had human populations were suddenly revealing hidden human installations. "How many humans are out there?" he asked Chancellor Yith Melanor. "We don't know," the Chancellor said. "Our ancestors thought they had sent all the humans back to Earth. But we were wrong. They never left. They just went to sleep and waited." On Earth, Dr. Lisa Parker made a discovery that changed everything. Deep in the underground facility, she found a room full of computers that had been running for thousands of years. The computers contained files about every alien species in the galaxy, detailed maps of every star system, and plans for technologies that were centuries ahead of current galactic science. "General Carter," she called over her communicator, "I found something. The humans who lived here before us, they knew about the galaxy all along. They've been watching everything, learning everything, preparing for this day." "What day?" General Carter asked. Lisa looked at the final file on the computer. It was labeled Judgment Day, Protocol. Inside were detailed plans for evaluating every species in the galaxy and determining which ones deserved to survive, in the new order. The day they decided the galaxy needed to be fixed, she said quietly. The Craxi invasion force was in full retreat. Admiral Thex Voran's mighty fleet was being destroyed by humans who had gone from primitive to advanced in a matter of hours. But he was not the only one who was scared. Across the galaxy, every military commander, every political leader, every species that had held power for thousands of years was receiving the same terrifying reports. The humans were awake, and they were not happy with what they saw. The rule that had kept the galaxy stable was broken, and now everyone would learn why it had existed in the first place. The Craxi invasion fleet was destroyed within 6 hours. Admiral Thex Voran's flagship limped away from Earth's solar system, heavily damaged and carrying news that would terrify the galaxy. The humans were not just awake. They were angry. Dr. Lisa Parker stood in the newly discovered command center deep under the Pentagon. The room was filled with screens showing star maps of the entire galaxy. Red dots marked worlds where humans were reporting in. There were thousands of them. "General Carter," she said, "we need to understand what's happening. According to these computers, there are human agents on almost every inhabited world in the galaxy. They've been sleeping for 3,000 years, but now they're all waking up." General Carter looked at the displays. "Agents? What kind of agents?" "All kinds," Lisa said, reading from the files. "Merchants, engineers, teachers, doctors, even janitors. They've been living normal lives, having families, growing old and dying, but their children carry the same genetic markers. They're all humans, but they're also something more." President Katie Walsh arrived at the command center with her security team. She looked around at the technology that was far beyond anything Earth should have possessed. "Dr. Parker," the president said, "I need answers. How long has this facility existed? Who built it? And why didn't we know about it?" "According to the records, Madam President, this facility has been here for over 3,000 years. It was built by humans, our ancestors, but not the ancestors we remember." Lisa brought up a holographic display showing Earth's history. 3,000 years ago, humans had an empire that spanned half the galaxy. When they pulled back to Earth, they didn't just abandon their colonies. They set up a network of sleeper agents in hidden bases. Then they used advanced technology to make the humans on Earth forget their galactic history. Why would they do that? President Walsh asked. Because they were disgusted, Lisa said. The galaxy they found was full of slavery, oppression, and cruelty. So they decided to wait. They would let their children live normal, peaceful lives on Earth, while their agents in space watched and learned. When the time was right, when Earth was threatened, the network would activate. Admiral Beth Collins coordinated the defense of Earth from Luna Base, a facility that had appeared on the moon's surface as if it had always been there. Her fleet now included ships that used technology decades ahead of anything Earth had built. Admiral, her communications officer reported, we're receiving surrender requests from the remaining Craxi ships. Also, we have incoming transmissions from something called the Galactic Council. Put the council through, Admiral Collins said. The face of Chancellor Yith Melanor appeared on the screen. The alien leader looked terrified. Admiral Collins, the Chancellor said, I am Chancellor Yith Melanor of the Trithari. On behalf of the Galactic Council, I wish to open diplomatic communications with humanity. I'm listening, Admiral Collins said. The Craxi Empire attacked your world without Council approval. We wish to make it clear that we had nothing to do with this aggression. We hope we can resolve this situation peacefully. Admiral Collins looked at the tactical display showing Craxi ships fleeing the solar system. Chancellor, we'll consider your request. But first we have some questions about how the galaxy has been run for the past 3,000 years. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the human network was fully active. On the industrial world of Forge Prime, a human engineer named David Kim walked into the planetary governor's office. The governor was a member of the hegemony species, gray-skinned aliens who ruled through fear and brutality. Governor Zex Thul, David said calmly, your rule over this world is ending. The governor laughed. You're just a factory worker, human. Guards, remove this fool. But when the guards tried to move, they found their weapons wouldn't work. David had spent 30 years maintaining the planet's power systems. He knew exactly how to shut down everything that kept the governor in power. The workers on this world will now govern themselves, David said. You can leave peacefully or you can be removed by force. Your choice. Similar scenes were happening on hundreds of worlds. Humans who had seemed powerless were revealing themselves to be anything but. They had spent generations learning their enemies' weaknesses, waiting for the right moment to act. Captain Jake Morrison tried to return to Earth, but his ship was stopped by a human patrol vessel that seemed to appear from nowhere. Captain Morrison, the patrol ship's commander said, this is Commander Sarah Blake of the Human Intelligence Network. We need to talk. Jake had never heard of the Human Intelligence Network. Commander Blake, I'm trying to get home to Earth. Earth is secure, Captain. But we have a bigger problem. The Galactic Council is mobilizing their military forces. They're planning to attack human space before we can fully activate our network. Jake looked at his scanner. The patrol ship was using technology that was far beyond anything in the Galactic Council database. How many ships do we have? More than you might think, Commander Blake said. But fewer than we need. The Council has been building their fleets for 3,000 years. We've been hiding and waiting. Now we have to fight a war we're not ready for. On Earth, engineer Tony Garcia worked with a team that had grown from 5 people to 50 in just one day. Humans from around the world were arriving at the Nevada facility, all of them carrying knowledge they should not have possessed. I don't understand how I know this, said Maria Santos, a college student from Mexico who had driven to Nevada after receiving dreams about alien technology. But I can see exactly how to improve our ships. It's the genetic memory, Tony explained. Our ancestors programmed knowledge into our DNA. When the network activated, it unlocked information that's been sleeping in our minds for generations. Together, they designed weapons and ships that combined human engineering with 3,000 years of observation and planning. Every weakness in galactic technology, every flaw in alien military doctrine, every secret the galaxy's rulers thought they had hidden. It was all there in the human genetic memory. Admiral Thex Voran reached the Craxi homeworld and immediately contacted the Galactic Council. His report sent shockwaves through every government in known space. The humans have ships that can outmaneuver anything we've built, he told the emergency council session. They have weapons that cut through our shields like they weren't there. But worst of all, they have detailed knowledge of our military capabilities. They knew exactly how to fight us. Chancellor Yith Melanor addressed the council. This confirms our worst fears. The humans never left. They've been watching us, learning our weaknesses, preparing for this day. What do they want? Asked the Xerion representative. Justice, the Chancellor said quietly. They want to tear down everything we've built and replace it with their own system. A system where all species are equal, where slavery is forbidden, where the strong don't rule the weak. That's chaos, said the hegemony representative. The galaxy needs order. The galaxy needs hierarchy. Try telling that to the humans, Chancellor Yith Melanor replied. Dr. Lisa Parker discovered something else in the ancient computers that made her blood run cold. The humans hadn't just been watching the galaxy for 3,000 years. They had been judging it. Every species had been evaluated. Every government had been analyzed. Every act of cruelty, every moment of oppression, every decision to choose power over justice had been recorded and filed. General Carter, she said, we need to contact President Walsh immediately. The network isn't just activating to defend Earth, it's activating to put the entire galaxy on trial. What do you mean? General Carter asked. Lisa brought up a file labeled Judgment, Protocols. Inside were detailed plans for something the original humans had called the Great Correction. It was a systematic plan to remove from power every species and government that had chosen oppression over freedom. They're not planning to conquer the galaxy, Lisa said. They're planning to liberate it. Every slave world, every oppressed species, every planet ruled by fear. They're all going to be freed. General Carter stared at the plans. How many species are we talking about? Thousands, Lisa said. Maybe tens of thousands. The galaxy is going to be completely transformed. As the word spread through human space, a choice became clear. Humanity could try to negotiate with the Galactic Council, accept some kind of compromise and return to hiding, or they could finish what their ancestors had started 3,000 years ago. President Walsh made the decision that would change galactic history. Dr. Parker, she said, send a message to every human agent in the galaxy. Tell them it's time for the Great Correction to begin. The galaxy had feared this moment for 3 millennia. Now it was here, and everything would change. 6 months after the Craxi invasion, the galaxy was a completely different place. The Great Correction had swept across known space like a wave, freeing oppressed species and dismantling governments that ruled through fear and violence. President Katie Walsh stood before the newly formed Democratic Assembly of Worlds on the planet Harmony Station. The station itself was a marvel of human engineering, built in just 3 months using technology that combined the best of galactic science with human innovation. Delegates, she said, addressing representatives from over 800 species, 6 months ago many of your worlds lived under the rule of fear. Today you govern yourselves. This is what the galaxy can be when all voices are heard equally. In the audience, beings who had been slaves just months before sat next to former rulers who had chosen to embrace the new order. Not all of the galaxy's old leaders had been removed. Those who had governed fairly and treated all species with respect had been allowed to keep their positions. But they now answered to the people they served, not to distant councils or emperors. Dr. Lisa Parker had become Earth's chief ambassador to the galactic community. She worked from an office on Harmony Station, coordinating the massive effort to rebuild galactic civilization. Her job was to help species learn how to govern themselves after thousands of years of being ruled by others. The hardest part, she told her assistant, Commander Rachel Brooks, is not the military operations or the technology transfers. It's helping people believe they deserve freedom. Rachel nodded. She had left her position in Earth's military to join the diplomatic corps. Her experience leading soldiers had prepared her well for the challenge of helping former slaves become leaders. The Valdori archives were right about one thing, Rachel said. Humans are more dangerous as liberators than as conquerors. When you conquer people, they still hope for freedom. When you free them, they start to expect it everywhere. Captain Jake Morrison now commanded the Peace Enforcement Fleet, a joint force made up of ships and crews from dozens of species. His job was to ensure that the old ways of oppression did not return to any world. Captain, his first officer, a former Craxi named Vex Torin, reported, "We're receiving a distress call from the Outer Rim. The warlord Krexval is trying to rebuild his slave empire on the mining worlds." Jake smiled. Vex Torin had been one of Admiral Thex Voran's officers. After the Craxi military was defeated, many Craxi soldiers had chosen to join the human-led forces rather than return to their oppressive homeworld. "Set course for the Outer Rim," Jake ordered. "Time to remind Krexval that slavery is no longer tolerated in this galaxy." The Peace Enforcement Fleet was not like the old military forces. It did not conquer worlds or impose human rule. Instead, it helped local populations free themselves and then left them to govern their own affairs. It was a military force dedicated to ending military rule. Engineer Tony Garcia had become the Director of Technological Development for the new galactic government. His job was to share advanced technology with species that were ready for it, while making sure that dangerous weapons did not fall into the wrong hands. "The key," he explained to a group of newly freed engineers from the Tau sector, "is not to give people technology they can't understand. We help them develop their own solutions using their own knowledge, improved with techniques we've learned." Tony's approach meant that different species developed technology in different ways. The crystal-based Xerions created computer systems that were more advanced than anything humans had built. The aquatic Kellans developed underwater cities that could house millions of people. Each species contributed something unique to the galactic community. Admiral Beth Collins oversaw the transformation of Earth's solar system into the headquarters of the new galactic order. Luna Base had become a massive shipyard, where vessels from hundreds of worlds came for repairs and upgrades. Mars Station coordinated relief efforts for worlds that were recovering from centuries of oppression. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "we're receiving a request from the former hegemony worlds. They want to join the Democratic Assembly." Beth considered this. The hegemony had been one of the most oppressive governments in the galaxy, ruling through fear and violence for over 2,000 years. But their fall had been swift and complete when their slave worlds rebelled with human support. "What's their status?" she asked. "They've held free elections on all 7 of their core worlds. The new governments have formally apologized for their past actions and have established reparations programs for the species they oppressed. Then they can apply for membership like everyone else," Beth said. "The past matters, but what matters more is what they choose to do now." On the former Craxi homeworld, Admiral Thex Varan worked as a security guard at a community center. It was not the career he had planned, but it was honest work. The Craxi military had been disbanded after the war, but individual Craxi who renounced violence were welcomed into the new galactic community. "It's strange," he told his human supervisor, David Lee. "I spent my whole life believing that the strong should rule the weak. Now I see that the strong should protect the weak." David nodded. He had been one of the sleeper agents, a man who had lived as a teacher on the Craxi homeworld for 20 years before the network activated. Now he helped former Craxi soldiers learn how to live in a peaceful society. "The hardest part about changing the galaxy," David said, "is helping people change themselves." Former Chancellor Yith Melanor of the Trithari had adapted better than most former leaders. The Trithari had never been particularly oppressive rulers, and they had quickly embraced the new democratic system. Yith Melanor now served as an advisor to species that were struggling with the transition to self-government. "The humans were right," he admitted to a gathering of former galactic leaders. "Our system was built on fear and hierarchy. It kept the galaxy stable, but it also kept it cruel. This new system is messier, but it's also more just. Not everything had been easy. Some species had tried to maintain their old ways of oppression. The Vorthan Empire had attempted to rebuild their slave networks, only to find their former slaves armed with human weapons and backed by human advisors. The war had lasted 3 weeks before the Vorthan government surrendered. Other species had simply fled to the edge of the galaxy, hoping to wait out what they saw as a temporary change. But as months passed and the new system proved stable and prosperous, fewer and fewer species chose isolation over participation. Dr. Lisa Parker received a report that made her smile. The planet Nexus Prime, which had once been a center for the slave trade, had become a hub for educational exchange. Former slaves were now teaching their former masters about the cultures and technologies they had been forced to suppress. "General Carter," she said over a secure communication link to Earth, "we're getting reports from across the galaxy. Crime rates are down. Economic prosperity is up. Scientific advancement is accelerating. It turns out that freedom is good for business." General Carter, who now served as Earth Secretary of Defense, looked at similar reports from his office in Washington. "Any resistance to the new order?" Some, Lisa admitted. There are still groups that want to return to the old ways, but they're getting smaller every month. It's hard to argue for oppression when the alternative is working so well. The transformation was not complete. There were still worlds recovering from centuries of abuse. Still species learning how to govern themselves. Still individuals struggling to adapt to a galaxy where their worth was not determined by their species or their birth. But the foundation had been laid. The galaxy now operated under principles that the original humans had dreamed of 3,000 years ago. That all intelligent species were equal, that freedom was a right rather than a privilege, and that the strong had a duty to protect the weak, rather than exploit them. President Walsh concluded her address to the Democratic Assembly with words that would be remembered for generations to come. 6 months ago, our species awoke from a long sleep to find a galaxy in chains. Today those chains are broken. Tomorrow we will continue to build a galaxy where every being can reach their full potential, where justice is not a dream but a reality, and where the ancient rule "don't wake humanity" has been replaced by a new promise: humanity will never sleep again. The applause that followed came from beings who had never been allowed to speak before, from species who had never been permitted to dream of freedom, from individuals who had never imagined they could shape their own destiny. The galaxy no longer feared what humanity might do. Instead, it celebrated what humanity had done, and in that celebration, the promise of an even better future was born. The rule that had governed galactic civilization for 3 millennia was gone forever. In its place stood something far more powerful: the hope that justice, once awakened, would never sleep again.